Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison. I want to welcome you to this session of Humanity Rising as we conclude a 5-day program on regenerative health. As we begin today, I just want to note that this is Cinco de Mayo. This is a time of honoring the revolutionary fervor of the Mexican people and revolutionary activity around the world as the national celebration in Mexico has become globalized over the last several decades. It marks not Mexican Independence Day, as is often thought, but rather a battle in 1862 between the French and the Mexicans. The French Emperor Napoleon III, at a time when things weren't going very well for him domestically, he decided that a good thing to do would be to invade Mexico and take over the country. So he sent an expeditionary force to Mexico to take it over, believing that the native peoples would have no capacity to withstand the might of France. And he ran into the meat grinder of General Zaragoza at a battle near the town of Pueblo, in which the Mexicans, outnumbered and outgunned and in every way inferior, but inspired by revolutionary fervor and inspired by the esprit de corps of indigenous people against colonizing armies, took on the French and demolished the French forces and forced the French to withdraw from Mexico. And that event was one of the early demonstrations globally in the face of European colonization, which had essentially taken over the entire globe, certainly the Western hemisphere, that it was possible for indigenous peoples to overthrow the Europeans and take them on, even on the battlefield. So that event, Cinco de Mayo, was celebrated globally now as a time of revolution. I want to raise this in relationship to what we've been talking about all week, because we're all Mexicans in the sense that the colonizer is the way scientific reductionism has taken over our minds. I'd like to think about that for just a moment today. This mentality that's taught in every school, that is permeated all of our media, that we live in a dead and meaningless universe governed by chemical reactions and physics that we think we understand, but we really don't. A mechanized Newtonian world without consciousness, and therefore without conscience. One of the reasons why we've brought the planetary ecosystem to the brink of self-destruction, with over 1 million species under threat, climate change spinning out of control, is because we believe we're in a world that is completely mechanical. And in the face of that, there's been emerging a new worldview that is as revolutionary as anything that Zaragoza and his Mexican troops did against the French. It's a worldview that says that the universe is actually consciousness itself in manifestation. That this consciousness is completely one, and within which all things cohere in an interrelated network, an Indra's net of aliveness. And therefore, all of us are part of that. And we are nature. We are stardust. We are part of the larger whole. And therefore, our mission in our life is to become aware of this most fundamental identity. And in that awareness, empathy and compassion for all sentient being, everything that exists, being as alive as we are, as conscious as we are, as capable of empathy and compassion and intelligence and communication as we are. And therefore, the mission of all of us is the mission of harmony with each other, harmony with the larger ecosystem, and harmony with the universe that has not only created us, but sustains us every moment of our lives and is dedicated to our well-being and our abundance and a thriving life. And that's really the Copernican revolution of our time. And so I think it's worth noting on the day of Cinco de Mayo that we're engaging in a revolution at Humanity Rising. And I think at the forefront of this revolution, which we've heard about this week, is a whole way of orienting ourselves, with our own bodies, with our own psyches, with our own emotions, within a deeper understanding of a resonance, a morphogenic resonance, as Rupert Sheldrake would say, with the larger whole. And that's what we have been witnessing this week with Stephanie and Stella and Spring, as they've been talking to us about how we can regenerate our own strength and fortitude and vitality, and also bring healing not only to ourselves and others by simply aligning ourselves with Mother Earth and with the resonance field that not only the Earth, but all the universe has. It's worth just noting, because we do a lot of breathing, that Plotinus 2,500 years ago said that the whole universe breathes together as one. So it's within this spirit that I would love to introduce our revolutionaries this week, who have really been inspiring us and are offering this course, as you all know, with Ubiquity University on regenerative health, because it couldn't be a more important activity at a time of chaos and turbulence, to engage in the deepest revolution there is, and that is to shift awareness on the part of humanity about who we actually are as part of the great pleroma. So thank you, Stephanie and Stella and Spring, for everything that you're doing, and I turn the program over to you.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you for bringing in Cinco de Mayo. You brought forward in my consciousness a memory of teaching at the Instituto de Zaragoza in Morelia, and I was seated in front of a Tonka-like painting of General Zaragoza, so that as I was speaking on topics like the one in regenerative health, he was like transmitting to me, and I felt that spirit. It was very powerful. I felt like I was receiving Shaktipat from General Zaragoza, and thank you for bringing in that important revolutionary concept, which is completely woven into everything that's going to be happening today. As always, we're attuned. So welcome everyone to the final day, but in many regards, the beginning of what Jim is calling this revolution in how we conceptualize health, healthcare delivery, healthcare practice. I want to begin with a somatic exercise. I'm so happy that Stella and Spring are here to do it with us, so that you can see how these exercises are individuated. Everyone will do them slightly differently. This particular one today, I would like to introduce in the light of its embryological significance, because the sites on the body that I direct you to in the somatic exercises I demonstrate are embryologically keyed to your development. And the exercise today is keyed in particular to approximately the 12th week in utero. So we're speaking of the first trimester in utero from the standpoint of the embryo, which is the standpoint we want to begin to develop, the perspective of the embryo, who is us. We are still embryos, still evolving. And the folding and unfolding movement that is the very rhythm of embryogenesis, which is still alive in us. It has sometimes been halted, but never stopped. And it's really important to always remember that windows of opportunity, stuck developmental spaces are never, ever stuck permanently, ever. They may be apparently rigidified, but remember the story of my daughter's supposed craniosynostosis. Fusing, what was called fusion, was not a true fusion. There was a space. So that quality of space is always there. And that's what we want to activate. And that principle of finding the motility, finding the movement, finding the space, and amplifying it, going with it, feeling it, identifying it, and being aware of it, that is the essence of regenerative health. So in this exercise, I'm speaking to the unfolding process that has to do with the neck and the throat. So it's important to understand that in embryogenesis, the unfolding is not only that movement, folding and unfolding, it's also the unfolding of structures, the unfolding of organs, the unfolding out of a highly compressed disc structure, which is the conceptus. Out of that unfolds everything. So I'm bringing your attention to the unfolding of the throat and the unfolding of the neck. And you can see and just visualize, the head-heavy embryo that you've all looked at some point. And just visualize that head, that heavy head structure, bringing with it the neck and the throat thereby, is unfolding out of the chest. So everything in the throat structure, the facial structure, the cranium itself, the brain itself is unfolding out of the chest, where very early the twinship of respiratory and cardiovascular function, so intimately connected, is feeding on a cellular level, on a tissue level, on a structural level, the evolution of the throat. So we're going to be holding sites that regenerate within us the felt sense of that unfolding experience and how that nourishes the throat, the avenue of expression. So the Regenerative Health Program is in many ways a program of advocacy. We are advocating for regenerative potential in every living system. So our focus is on human health, but simultaneously, we are sending a message of regenerative possibility into every living system, seen and unseen, to unfold. And unfolding specifically in the throat is about expression. Advocacy and expression are stimulated through the exercise that we're going to do. And as a byproduct, this exercise will also help you with any throat issues, any thyroid issues, sore throat, that's beginning of a sore throat that many people notice where it starts to feel a little tight and scratchy. If you do this exercise, that will dissipate the phenomena that might be arising as an infection in your throat. So we're going to find a site, I call these sacred sites. And they evolve from the map of the body that I learned from my beloved teacher, now my ancestor, Mary Eno Burmeister, and I don't want to ever fail to acknowledge her as I share these exercises with you. So this one you're going to find, and you can go to the right or left side, whatever feels comfortable to you. Just find the base of your earlobe with one hand, and then trace a straight line from the base of that earlobe over to your cervical spine, over to the spinal structures in your neck. And then come back midway, find a little groove midway between the base of your earlobe and your cervical spine. And let's just take a moment here as you drop whatever fingers, and we're not pressing, we're not tapping, we're not massaging. We're just finding this little groove. And don't worry exactly where it is, because there's a radius around it, a field. It's a vibrational field. And vibrational means bioelectric. So there is, of course, bioelectricity circulating in the body all the time. That's what is being read when you have an X-ray or an MRI. So that bioelectricity is well documented. So let your fingertips just rest in this little groove or any area midway between the base of your earlobe and your cervical spine. And just let whatever fingertips are there form a relationship with that connective tissue. And let that beginnings of a relationship very organically deepen your breath. And start very gently, very consciously to tune in to the subtle sensory messages, maybe pulsation, maybe temperature changes, maybe images even. And in this neutral place that Stella demonstrated so exquisitely yesterday, from that neutral place, stepping behind yourself, as she said, not figuring out anything, not doing anything with the experience, just noticing it. Just recognize the communication between that area of connective tissue and your fingertips. And then you're going to bring the fingertips of the opposite hand to the chest area. And let's start by going to the base of the collarbone, right? That knobby outpouring there, that is more medial. And you'll notice that if you slip down right under the clavicle, right under that outcropping, there's an interstitial or spongy area. So just notice that. Notice how your breath is just on its own deepening as your attention to your own being becomes the center of your awareness. And then under that interstitial area, you'll find a thin, bony structure, which is a rib. So you're just noticing that, and keep sliding. And there again, between the ribs, another spongy area. And then slide again. And there's that next rib. And then slide one more time into the interstitial area between the third and the fourth rib on your chest, and rest there. Let your fingertips rest there. So your fingertips are now on your neck and on the opposite chest. So letting your breath ground you, slow you, and ease you into relationship to the earth, to wherever you're sitting or standing, to the spaces around you. Drop in to your own private space, the well of your being, and see how the breath deepens of its own accord when you do that. And notice the potential communication between these two places, the neck and the opposite chest. And breathe into that. Just allow yourself the experience of touch with yourself and the somatic sensory language of cellular communication. See how your breath deepens and how there may be an experience of amplitude that you didn't even know was ever possible. Perhaps a resonance, as if these two places are finding their intimacy with one another. And then if you feel like it, you could just switch to the other side, finding that same space on the opposite side of the chest, the opposite neck area, right at the base of the earlobe, midway. There's a little groove there that your fingertips now are already smart enough to find without much further direction. The intelligence of your hands as the instrument of your heart is now unfolding. And perhaps you feel an impulse to lengthen through the neck, to widen across the chest, through this very gentle suggestion of connection and the release of potential. And then whenever you're ready, you can bring the pads of all your fingers, the palms of your hands into contact. Feel the contact. And feel the alignment and centrality that comes with that contact. This is your central channel. You are strengthening it. You are bringing it forward. I'm placing this inju or mudra at the throat level. We are remembering the evolution of our avenue of expression, our capacity for advocacy, articulation, a capacity that has been stifled culturally, definitely for different genders in different ways. But all of that through this practice has been liberated from that colonization of our voices and centered now, articulation centered, somatically in alignment, breathing into that. Feeling your breath deepening beyond what you thought was possible. And I say that as someone who has struggled with asthma and related respiratory issues my entire life. The breath that I'm feeling now, moving from the back of my body, expanding the side bodies, is quite significant for me. Enjoy that. And staying in this space, I'd like to share a poem with you. It's called The American Waiting Room. But as I was reviewing it and editing it last night, I also subtitled it, Why I Created the Regenerative Health Paradigm. I'm going to have to, I have a book of poetry coming out soon called The Great Physician. And I'm going to have to update this poem in the book now that I've edited it. So let me read this and share it with you. It's a report of, you can tell as I read it, an actual experience I had in an American waiting room. The round-faced woman seated beside me in the doctor's waiting room turns to me and says, "My baby sister is dying. I'm saving up to take her on a hot air balloon ride. It's on her bucket list. There's nothing they can do about it. My baby sister is dying. There's nothing they can do about it." My hand goes to my heart. "You are a wonderful sister," I say. The woman pulls out her phone and shows me a photo of her sister pouring a vodka martini into her feeding tube. Then she points to her foot where her ankle is swollen to the size of an orange and bright red. And she says, "I had surgery there, but since then, I can hardly walk. I'm retired now," she adds. Across the room, a mom is trying to shush her agitated son, who keeps hitting his head with his clenched fist. The mom adjusts her body to hide her child, glancing furtively at the others in the room. She's worried about disturbing us. The receptionist keeps her attention on her computer screen. Her extremely long fingernails are painted green with shamrocks. It's St. Patrick's Day. Those fingernails click rhythmically above the sounds of Lady Gaga singing "We're in the Shallows Now." The air suddenly turns unnecessarily cold on a blustery March day. The smell of a microwaved meal, probably lasagna, wafts through the cold air. A silent TV shares screens of bombed out Ukrainian cities. Scenes of bombed out Ukrainian cities flash silently and then transition to a newscaster who is unbelievably immaculately shaven, impeccably attired, papers in his hands, and he is sitting behind an S-shaped acrylic desk in a room that seems to turn as if on a turntable of assorted tragedy. I search for and find note the word here, I search for and find my neutrality. I search for and find my neutrality in this room. In this room that I share with humanity. I search for and find my neutrality in this room that I share with humanity. I identify the midline of my being. I am awash with grief and rage, grief and rage, grief and rage, grief and rage, grief and rage. I find the midline of my body, and in that silent neutrality that I finally discover, in that silent neutrality that I finally discover in the room that I share with humanity, I unite with everyone. I unite with the round-faced woman with the swollen ankle seated next to me. I unite with her dying sister with the vodka martini in her feeding tube. I unite with the receptionist with the long green fingernails. I unite with the embarrassed mom. But especially, I have to say, I unite with the boy that is obscured by his mother's body and whose uncontrollable sounds renew. His uncontrollable sounds, even though he's hidden by his mother's embarrassed body, his uncontrollable sounds renew my commitment to my destiny. And this is why I created Regenerative Health for a climate changing world, and why I want to tell you about the Rivers of Splendor, the indwelling birthright that is yours. Thank you. So I'd like to bring in the wonderful voices of my S sisters, Stella and Spring. Please share your reflections.
Thank you, Stephanie. That was really beautiful. I was actually just having a conversation this morning with a patient on the table. We were talking about being empaths, and it struck me that well, because in so many of us, empathy is generated, or empathic ability is generated from not being very well attached to our caregivers. It struck me that perhaps at this time, there's so many empaths coming in or here, you know, generated from all the pain and suffering in the world. Like Gaia's response is this like great empathy for ourselves, really, like ourselves as ourselves. The whole being of us in the waiting room that you're talking about, and the part of us, the part of that whole us that can witness and see and hold space for us at the same time. It's a really beautiful poem, really beautiful metaphor for where we find ourselves today. Thank you for that.
Yeah. It's definitely the hearing your poem is like it's a ode to interbeing. It's the, you know, this you painted these different aspects of interbeing. You know, when we talk about interbeing, like what Stella and Stephanie were demonstrated yesterday, we're not plugged in some super power higher above us. It is these actual beings, the boy, the mother, the dying person, the immaculate shaped news anchor, all of these people, they carry they are a manifestation of Gaia in her different aspect. And At the same time, we can, those people and myself and us, our attention can be blocked in one aspect. It's like we inhabited this huge mansion, but maybe our attention only blocked where we imprison ourselves in our own cell of our belief, our limitation, and the reaction come from the earlier trauma. We imprison ourselves, and then we manifested in all this loneliness and the disconnection and distortion. But within that, it's precisely within that is the doorway into our connection with interbeing again. Yeah, so thank you for bringing us into this place, Stephanie.
What we want to do today is continue the way in which we have been interacting throughout this week, the three of us, with the intention really of sharing with those of you who have an interest in pursuing the regenerative health program in whatever form you want to pursue it, for personal development, to a credential your own empathic tendencies, to bring together the studies you've already done, and to investigate further into the areas we represent. You would be deepening everything that you've experienced during this week, your understanding of embryogenesis, the prenatal origins of health, the map of the body that I have keyed to embryological developmental phases, the paradigms that I've created, and for accessing that early information as a way of magnifying interbeing within you. And from Stella, you would have the opportunity to practice that masterful quality of neutrality that brings with it the allowing and awareness that is resonant attention. And then from Spring, you have the incredibly precious opportunity to study with an indigenous Taoist who has evolved her rooted transmission of I Ching, for one thing, but many other aspects of the Taoist understanding of regenerative health. Spring has evolved that based on her own incredible intelligence and mission in regard to regenerative health. So we want to continue to expose ourselves to you, so to speak, so that you know who your faculty is, who you will be studying with. That feels important for us. We want to personalize this program. It is highly personalized. The bridge is from the personal to the collective, as we are demonstrating. And we want really to create a cohort of people who we mentor as a team as well as individually. And so we thought we would have a conversation here about what's really current, what we are compelled by right now in our lives, where is our research leading us, what is uppermost in our awareness as we ourselves are transparently evolving beings. We are not these authorities who are already set in stone to bequeath what we have recorded to you. We are fluid with you. We are evolving. And we are evolving from a basis of what we've been cultivating for our lifetime. So, Spring, would you like to start with kind of where is your incredible curiosity leading you right now?
Thank you. I want to just take a moment of a breather of taking in all that has been exchanged and transmitted throughout this week, and find a way in to share what's up for me right now. I think what I'm going to highlight is what we have talked about with different terms and different ways of demonstrating this idea of neutrality and wu wei. Neutrality in terms of like in Stephanie's poem, the cycle of rage and grief, the power, the force of the will, and also the willingness to step into vulnerability and to feel the brokenness. So the neutrality to me is like walking on a knife ridge or walking a tightrope. You're holding, how you see how people holding walking on tightrope, holding a long pole. And to me, that long pole is like one end extending to our possibility, our future, and the other end is deep into the suffering and the pain and the burden. And we're walking, and it's not by jumping into the future and leave the past behind, and also not by just pulled down by the past, but it's really walking this central line. And we're always like balancing and feeling the subtlety, walking on this tightrope. So I just want to share that in my day of my journey of like navigating through daily life, and almost every day, I would notice how my own reactivity, the reactive pattern where I caught in that I'm like this tightrope walker, and I might caught in this way and I caught this way, and I can match it like roughly to the fight, flight, and freeze and fun. There's actually 4 Fs. The traumatic response. There's fight, flight, freeze, and fawning. Fawning is the opposite of flight. Opposite of fight. The fight is like I'm just gonna like blow you away, but the fawning is, oh, it's all my fault. I'm worthless. I'm not good enough. I'm not valuable enough. And then there's the flight, which is, oh, I'm going to carve out a space here and just going to be in my little paradise and I'm not worry about all these. And versus the freeze is just being stuck and not able to do anything, being a state of paralyzed. So, and I'm constantly notice how subtle. And so as the 3 of us talked about, what we are here helping to create is really a container to hold a healer's journey, which means this journey is not ending. It's not like there's an end point, or we certainly are not arriving at an end point. I think however, the cycle does go more and more fluid or more and more smooth to a certain extent until you hit the next challenge, and then you might be thrown into some big cycle again. The way I think about the healer's journey is really, it's almost like an ongoing menstrual cycle on the psychic level. Our soul is shedding layers and layers in order to keep fertile. That shedding is actually something to be celebrated. We don't have to hide in our little cell to feel lonely and depressed and dark. And that's really, I think, what's changed to me in the healing journey is that I start to create a cauldron around me. People I trust when I'm in that dark place. I can ask. Literally, the last weekend I was going through something really dark. I was in fear, deep fear of losing my loved ones, or experience the hurt of separation, and it's just immensely valuable to have a friend a friend who happened to accompany me to walk on the beach, and I lay my head on her shoulder. And that simple gesture, surrounded by nature, allow me to walk through that dark moment and find my balance again on this tightrope. So that's what I wanna invite you to think this as a coming on a journey with us. There are going to be cycles. There's going to be up and down. There are going to be triumph and celebration, and there's going to be holding each other's hand in pain and darkness. And in that place, we're holding each other to find answer, find a way through for each one of us, because that answer is not going to come from a higher authority or prescribed by some higher wisdom. It is life wants to unfold through your path, through that dark moment. So I actually have I think that's what I want to say for and I the last day, yesterday, as I was thinking about today, all the things that we've talked about this week, like all the words that literally dropped in front of me, and they turned into a song that I'd like to share. So I think I'm gonna share now, and yeah, I'm gonna post these words into the chat room. All right, so I'd like to sing this song, and I'm going to turn on the original sound for musician. All right. It's really fresh off from the oven. Let me see if I can remember everything. The healer within is waking up. Their hands are allowing and the heart is bowing to Gaia, to spirit, to interbeing. Through healing journey we return to one. The seas are rising, we feel like drowning. The warriors lay bare their heart and sing. Pain cracks us open so we can receive. Together we rise to answer the calling. Together we rise to answer the calling. The wound inside is the portal through. What we fear the most is the way to go. Embrace what is with empty hand. May grace flow through my trusting soul. May grace flow through my trusting soul. May grace flow through my trusting soul. Thank you. This is a tribute to all the spirit that has graced us in the last 4 days, through Stephanie, through Stella, and through all of you.
Oh, wow. Well, I'm honored to go next. Yeah. I just love your singing, Spring. It's just really beautiful. has this like incredibly, like you know, the Chinese heritage is really woven through, you know, and it's
Well, I feel deeply seen when you can hear the Chinese heritage in my song. That's really meaningful to me. Thank you.
I wish every time, both times I've heard you sing now, I wish Carrie was here, because he was Chinese in a past life for sure, and he loves it.
I'll send the recording to you.
So the question that I'm now struggling to get back to is about where we are now, and actually the other piece that we had intended to talk about today was really this kind of healer's journey, and about how important it is to be broken open in order to be able to heal people, really. That I was listening to Peter Levine and Gabor Mate talking about how really, unless you've been down a healing path, it's very hard to generate the capacity, to generate the resonance that's needed to meet somebody in resonance. That there really is something, you know, when you walked the path, then you can walk the path with others, you know, or that you can show other people the way through. I've certainly had a very long path of healing in my body, in my, you know, emotional life. I have a Pluto in the first house. I actually don't know anything about astrology, but somebody told me that once, and they told me that it means that my spiritual life happens through the body. And I've noticed that as each physical thing that I heal corresponds, as you know, the fractal reality that we live in corresponds to emotional healing, to spiritual healing, and that along the way I've just become more and more coherent, almost as if I was split, very, very deeply split, you know, in my yin and yang. And that I used to, especially as a child, I used to be very much existing in two different planes. And as I've healed over the years, I've just kind of come together. And there's a lot of particulars I've written. I wrote about it. I wrote a memoir called Star Sister, and I wrote another one called The Universe is Generous, that is published on my Substack, resonantattention.substack.com, that are really both about healing my body and really heart mind. But currently, I'm very happy to say I'm actually very healthy, extraordinarily healthy, actually, for 52. I had a baby at 42 without any trouble. And I really have no pain. I don't have much. I still am doing a little bit of healing on my neck, the end of scoliosis. But I'm in no pain, generally speaking, which is quite a miracle. And I have both of my breasts and most of my mental faculty. But now I'm like in this really interesting phase where I'm wondering, like, okay, when there's not trauma to alchemize, or when there's not a lot of trauma to alchemize, what occurs in the body? Along the way, working with other people, as I've worked on myself, I've come to respect to just like a mind-blowing degree how individual we all are, and how our like the way we run our energy, and the way we express ourselves, and the way we show up in our bodies, and the way we express our pain and trauma through our bodies is so unique. What you saw yesterday with Stephanie was nothing I'd ever encountered before. Some of the some of the archetypes of how to heal are, you know, are transmissible because they sort of hold throughout, but the individual, you know, Stephanie as an individual and me as an individual, we come together to create this moment that liberates whatever healing is possible in that moment. And that is it. It's really not, it does not fit into the paradigm of, oh gosh, I can't even think about like, what is it when, you know, the capitalists, you know, make something and then mass produce it and sell it.
Prototype.
Is that?
Prototype.
Yeah, you know, like yeah, just this whole idea that turn medicine into a commodifiable thing, right? Like it must be an art from my perspective. And so, you know, there's always this beautiful humility and bowing to the moment and stepping into the unknown, and without that, I don't think true healing which liberates possibility, right? Like not healing that leads to side effects, but healing that increases capacity, right? Like that kind of healing isn't possible unless we're really attentive to the moment and all that's encoded in it. Yeah, so this program, it is it will always be a mystery. It will always be an experiment. It will always be emergent. It can't be any other way. And so if you do dare to dive in to your own journey as a healer, or to hold space for other people's healing, you will have to get comfortable with that feeling of I don't know. I don't know is the core of it's like what leads to a way. It almost maybe is Wu Wei. It is the root of humility, you know, it is the fertile ground for emergence, you know. Without being brave enough to step into I don't know, then, you know, all you'll get is performance. And I've done that too. I've gone to healers for sure. I have gone to healers and said, oh yeah, I'm better. I like this little thing here. I'm going to keep this. I'm thank you. I'll pay you your money, but I'm going to go. Right. Like what we're really, maybe that served me. I'm not actually denigrating myself for those moments of fear and mistrust. Maybe it wasn't right. Maybe there was a guiding wisdom that I knew better than to open up at that point. And you know, like we can't ultimately encompass, like we can't prescribe or encompass like the whole grand mystery that we're all involved in. But I do know for myself, and I know, and I think you could hear it in that song that Spring just sang, and the poem that Stephanie read, that we're in for it. You know, we are here to show up for you. And it is our sacred honor to be here. Yeah. I also actually want to say, if I can suck up some more airtime here, that one of the other areas that I'm interested in exploring is around German New Medicine. I don't know if any of you have heard of that modality. It's arisen out of Germany, obviously. And the basis of it is this idea that the body is always working for your benefit, and that sometimes it'll run these programs that are meant to metabolize some of your trauma or create more capacity in your system while you're trying to manage trauma, that are ultimately lead to what we might call disease. It's actually an incredibly beautiful modality that's even redefining disease worth Googling. But I find in the body that there are these, I can feel when the body is running a program versus when there's trauma. And so I don't come across it all the time. I'm actually working on that in my own body right now, where I've like metabolized enough trauma that I'm realizing, oh, this isn't trauma. This is just a habit. This is just a program my body sinks into. And how do we liberate the body from that kind of a thing? So although the bulk of my work is like deeply alchemical and very much not about spiritual bypassing, I'm actually exploring when is it appropriate to spiritually bypass, which I think is hysterical. Just like tickled that I'm like, gosh, maybe I should just spiritually bypass this one. So just to say, like, you know, all bets are off. Like, it really is the Wild West over here in regenerative healthcare land.
I'm so delighted, Stella. You're the first person I heard this question. I'm wondering too, like, if I just consciously using, spiritual, but if I know I'm doing spiritual bypass, maybe it's just one of the strategy in my pocket versus, if I
Totally
unconsciously, yeah.
That's exactly what I'm exploring. It's like, you know what, I've done tons and tons of alchemical work around this issue, and I can't find anything anymore. So maybe it's just a habit and a program, because I can feel when my body shifts into that program, and I can feel when my body's not running that program. I haven't figured out how to shift out of that program, but I've been like actively exploring like willpower. I think it's hysterical, but it's like, it's like as you go deeply into yin, you end up back in yang.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that every modality has its beauty and its place, and I hope that in regenerative healthcare we do that too. Like, I'd love it if we really actually deeply enmeshed with the Western system and found a way to really, bring all of our gifts to the table,
Well, that feels like a place that I can jump in for a moment here and state, I think it's implicit already, but the regenerative health program in this Ubiquity version of the MA PhD offering, which is available to people in whatever way you want to engage with it as an audit or just explore it. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. And we'll put in the chat, just for logistics, the information session that you can come to on May 30th at 10 a.m. Pacific, which gives you the logistics of the actual process with Ubiquity staff being present, as well as Spring and Stella and I. But I want to let you know that this is not necessarily, it can be a program in which you refine your gifts as someone in the healing arts. It absolutely will provide you with in-depth processes, experiences, and at least in the case of the Chara approach, for the resolution of shock and trauma, which is a fusion of the Eastern practices that I've been sharing with you that come from my teacher, Mary Eno Burmeister, and my studies as a neuroscientist and an embryologist. Those come together in the Chara approach. And there's actual certification available for you if you enter this program. If you wanted to become certified in the Chara approach, you could do that through this program. And you can do something similar, perhaps not with an actual document, but that might emerge, even because everything is so emergent. It might occur in this process in resonant attention and resonance path. You can do deep dives into those programs and focus on them for healing arts practices. But there is actually a bigger context as well. That's a significant context that obviously I have been there as someone who had private practice for a long time. There is another context which is healthcare delivery. And that was a driving force in the original concept that came to me as I was creating climate change and consciousness. Simultaneous with that, this vision of regenerative health for a climate changing world was being born. And it had very much to do with healthcare delivery and the idea that is now part of this program that you can become a regenerative health practitioner and actually go into your community, which could be a family structure. I do that. I work with families as a regenerative healthcare practitioner, working with the whole family system. It could be a community organization. It could be a network of people within a community. It could be whatever gathering of people you are involved with, and you come in with the intention of serving as a regenerative health practitioner for a collective. So that is, excuse me, built into the program.
Can I just
that you gain those skills? Yes.
Can I just add a tiny piece to complement what you just said?
Sure.
Like, my team and I are in Bellingham, in the town we're living, actually are creating a ritual for healing the 3 years of COVID in the name of improv theater performance, where we invite people to tell stories and we reflect back through expression. So I just want to say that there are many ways to do healing and health and deliver health that can take on forms, so creative that beyond the current scope of, conventional healthcare. So, yeah, so this is just, augment what you're just saying.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And there's a film that I've created with some regenerative health practitioners in Aotearoa called Free to Heal, which I'll make available to people who sign up for the program, which demonstrates exactly what Spring just described, in which you see people assembling around the healthcare needs of an individual in the community and creating a healing circle that delivers through applied touch practices and song, because song is very woven into Maori healthcare practices, which I have the honor of being involved with my communities in Aotearoa. So Spring is exactly right. So that being able to do that is part and parcel of the regenerative health design, so that you become a regenerative health practitioner who creates these cauldrons, these collectives, such as what Spring is doing in Bellingham. And so along those lines, like we were talking about, what are you curious about now? What are you studying now? So I'm actually, I never read one book at a time. So I brought forth my current reading pile. And in this pile is The People's Hospital by Ricardo Nuila, who talks about how you can bring a regenerative health vision into a hospital setting. So he doesn't know about me and what I do. He doesn't know about the regenerative health paradigm or this MA PhD program, but he's doing something very much like that in a hospital in Texas, believe it or not, in Texas. You all know what's going on in Texas. That's not anything like this. And that's, to me, important to realize that even in a world that looks like it is adversarial and completely counter to what we believe in, there are these collectives who are aligned with us, led by people like Dr. Ricardo Nuila, who, by the way, also heads up an expressive arts program in this hospital. So he is actively using theater, narrative, and the expressive arts as part of the medicine that this hospital offers. And along those lines, I am rereading a book that had an enormous impact on me, which is What the Eyes Don't See by Dr. Mona Atisha. And this is the woman who exposed the scandal of lead in the water in Michigan. So she's a pediatrician who was seeing the lead in the blood samples that she was taking out of children who were sick. And she started the ruckus. She's probably now disappeared in terms of people's awareness, but she wrote this book about how diligent she was in identifying the contamination in the water and all the work she did to document that clinically and expose it. So this is the interface between Western medicine that is paying attention. It does exist. There are people who practice that way. She's paying attention and having the courage to come forward with her discoveries that, of course, were refuted for political reasons, not for clinical reasons, but that didn't stop her. The fortitude that's necessary to bring this revolution, reskilling is the word that Stella has introduced, and I like it. For those who get upset about the word revolution, we have reskilling into our very understanding of healthcare practices, and the healthcare delivery is really important to me because it's from the ground up. That delivery system, which is inherent in the regenerative practitioner aspect of what I created when I first conceptualized regenerative health, is a delivery system from the ground up. And I created, and I'm still in the process of erecting, what I call a cultural library of regenerative health resources, which is a website fueled by technology that is not reliant on an internet connection, that will allow the resources that Stella has shared, that Spring shares, that I share, and many others, such as Maori healthcare systems, indigenous healthcare systems, which I've been researching and collating for almost a decade now, to be downloaded to communities when they are unable to access a authoritative, in quotes, healthcare agency that they may feel reliant upon. And there is literature that shows how effective homegrown healthcare practices, indigenous healthcare practices, time-tested healthcare practices, and I add clinically tested healthcare practices, are in times when healthcare agencies are inaccessible, such as research that was done just recently in Puerto Rico when Hurricane Maria happened. So we have evidence that this is effective in a climate changing world. And that is another avenue that I want to emphasize in the regenerative healthcare program. So if you choose, you can come in to acquire modalities that amplify or augment or begin your own healthcare practice, for which you would be then responsible for that development on your own, because we're not certifying healthcare practitioners, we're certifying practices that you've learned. But you can also come into the program because you want that along with service to your community, perhaps a specific community or any community, and you're interested in developing those skills that include cultural sensitivity. Cultural sensitivity is essential for the delivery of true healing resources. You cannot do it just from the standpoint of the resources. That's a key part of regenerative healthcare practice. You're always in the context, in the worldview, in the rootedness of those whom you are serving. I'll stop there for the moment. Thank you for those who are following through on my references and actually posting these resources in the chat. I appreciate that so much. Some of these books are actually on the reading list. So there is a reading list. This program does have rigor to it. And there is a reading list, but these are beloved books that are on the reading list. These are books that have changed our lives, as Mona Atisha's book did, as The People's Hospital Emergency by Thomas Fisher is another one from the Western tradition. Inflamed by Rupa Marya, that is a seminal book, an essential book. It's on the required reading list. She has done an extraordinary job, and this is a woman that really walks her talk. Rupa Marya, Inflamed, in terms of really understanding a radical regeneration within the healthcare system.
Yeah, there's other resources like Thomas Verney's The Embodied Mind, which I've been finding fascinating lately to think about how he's showing a lot of the science around how memory gets stuck actually in the cell walls and tissues and not in the brain, as we, so which is what we find, it's what I find in the body all the time. It's memory that we're going into and helping the body to metabolize. Gosh, I know I have a pile of books by my bed too that I'm reading all the time, but I'm trying to see if another one comes to mind. What do you got cooking, Spring?
Oh, I don't want to interrupt your list.
You'd have to go up and look. Oh, actually, I have my list here right on my phone. I actually just got those books that you recommended the other day, Spring, and I'm very excited about the
Trying not to try. It's I'd like actually, if we bring that piece to the cultural sensitivity course, I'd like that to be a required reading. It's really a Western scholar did a great job explicating the Wu Wei, both in ancient China and also from the perspective of modern cognitive science, neuroscience.
And the geography of the mind?
Geography of thoughts. Geography of thoughts is another one to show how literally the Eastern Hemisphere way of thinking is different than the Western. It's almost like our thought patterns or belief patterns. It's just like a plant vegetation. They are representative of the climate and the geography of the particular part of the earth. And that book really goes into how Eastern Asian people's fundamental belief and language structure is different. And that's what gives rise to these Chinese medicine or East Asian medicine or different modalities, which, I just want to share a little bit, something ongoing in my life is my partner, both my professional and domestic partner, Joe, is American and I'm Chinese. So we constantly, when we talk about the geography thoughts, these different thought structures and the unconscious belief are like tectonic plates that constantly clash into each other. And sometimes there's volcanic explosion, but out of that volcanic explosion, there can be creative energy that can be harnessed in the source if we're not burned down by those volcanic explosions. So so there's an endless zone of exploring how our embodied mind is interacting with I think the thing about healing is interesting. I experienced that in myself and also other people is in healing setting, we can integrate and aligned. And then as soon as we're out in the world, when we're inundated by thought structures and conscious patterns and vibrations, that's not resonant with the frequency we just aligned with, and how that is that process is just endlessly going. And so this is something in this program we're going to explore is, we create our own microcosmic cultural environment, and how we're gonna almost like in a petri, we're in a petri dish, and then how do we grow this life out of the petri dish in the larger environment? Yeah,
that really stimulates me here to mention my book that's coming out next month, The Secret of Resilience: Healing Personal and Planetary Trauma Through Morphogenesis. And I mention that because that book, as well as another book of mine that's coming out, The Great Physician, Medicinal Poetry for the Anthropocene, these two books coming out together in the next couple of months really represent how my voice as an artist and my voice as a scientist and my voice as a health activist have come together out of all of the aspects of regenerative health that I'm sharing here in this program. And the reason I mention that fruition in the form of these books is, well, for one thing, I'm always encouraging the propagation of books, of people synthesizing their experience into a form that transmits it to other people, and doing the due diligence of refining the skill set that allows you to do that in a way that speaks eloquently, clearly, and simply to an audience. So my other two books here on my current reading list are books about writing, Good Prose by Tracy Kidder, and an old book that is going to be valuable forever, Line by Line, by Claire Carewald Cook, which is really about good writing. How do you take your impulse to communicate and put it into a form that, out of your empathy and compassion, really reaches other people? And I will foster that in this program. I want to invite people who have books inside of them that are on these themes of regenerative health, but haven't managed to manifest that concept into something that they could call a manuscript, something that they could call a book or an article or a blog series, whatever format, poetry, whatever format really matches that delivery. If you have it in your heart and in your passion to deliver the consolidated, the complete network of your insight, everything you've synthesized into a form that speaks to other people, deliver a baby, you might say. If that embryo is alive in you, that's how I think of all my books. They're embryos that came into form. And these two books that are coming out, Secret of Resilience and The Great Physician, these embryos are the closest to truly representing me of everything that I've written. And I want to share with others the skills I have cultivated to reach this point. And if that's on your bucket list, please join the program and I will mentor you through doing that. If your book is along the lines of regenerative health, coming through this program can result in that final product for you. It could be your thesis. It could come out of a paper that you write. I'm committed to regenerative health through literature. You're muted, Stella.
Yeah. There's a question here about our approach to mental illness. I didn't know if either Spring or Stephanie wanted to address.
I'm sorry, could you read the question?
Yeah, is there a statement of vision from the viewpoint of regenerative health on a new paradigm approach to mental illness?
Well, Spring is heading up the track on holistic mental health and the expressive arts. I
So
could speak to it from the CHAR standpoint, but that is the purview of Spring's track,
I'd
so I'll
like to
let her
hear-
speak to it.
I'd like to hear Stephanie's dimension too. I think, first of all, even this idea of mental illness itself needs to be revisited and revised. I think we know so little about the diversity of our, we have so, our culture is so limited in understanding mental diversity or psychological diversity, or I think, Stephanie is specialized in neurological diversity. Like I said in my session on, I forgot which day, two of my major co-worker for contributing immensely to the evolution of Taoism and the resonance code, they had all in their past been diagnosed as bipolar disorder, which is really these people have genius in them that was not recognized and not cultivated at their young age, and giving a condition to grow, and then we stick a label on them, pathological label. So that itself needs to be, is something that we need to revisit and broaden our way of thinking. And so, for me, our way of, so, we talk about spirit, mind, and the body. It's like in the Chinese Taoist system, there's this three layers, you can think of the same consciousness can have different densities, just like water can be vapor and liquid and ice. The same consciousness result into our mental and mental health, spiritual health, and physical health. And for me, I on that day I described the 4 dimensions to our approach in regenerative mental health. First is to attunement to our body. So whatever the disturbance or challenge we encountered in our mental realm, one important aspect is to direct attention, not to be trapped in the mental realm and in a dead loop, but ground something into the body. And then the second dimension is a way of directing attention to that mental disturbance with a quality, the same quality like Stella and Stephanie demonstrated, of allowing and the presence, rather than trying to shape it and control it and wanting it to be something else, but with a curiosity and a neutrality and a nurturing quality. And the third dimension that's really important is the dimension of community and a we culture, where we realize whatever manifests through one person is not just about that person's psyche, but it's a intense manifestation of actually our collective shared psyche. And the fourth one is to encourage us to express ourselves with organic form of art not for the sake of performance, but art as a way to resonate deeply with that is unfolding in our soul and in our mental realm. So that's where we are right now. And so Stephanie, would you like to?
Yeah, I'll say a few words about approaching the issues of mental illness, and then we'll bring Jim in from the Tara approach standpoint. And of course, I approach that as a neuroscientist and also as an embryologist. So my first place of inquiry is into the prenatal origins of health, and then that is coupled with an understanding of how neuronal consolidation occurs. So Stella was referencing addictive, habituated behaviors. So those which frequently form resistance, I'll bring in my grandma Sophie, who came into the session yesterday, the statue of my grandma. I've been in relationship with her ever since, and talk about neuronal consolidation. So that stuck state is a state of habituation. So when Stella was talking about running a program, that's another way of saying neuronal consolidation. So to approach neuronal consolidation with an understanding of the prenatal origins of health, coupled with particular application. So I am so blessed to have learned an astounding, simple application, which I can teach anyone, that actually addresses neuronal consolidation, habituation, running a program because you're just addicted to the program, from the standpoint of intervening in a very nuanced but precise way with the somatosensory cortex, because that's where that habituation is lodged. It's lodged behaviorally. And you can, and I can give examples of this that are astounding, where habituated program running, even obsessive behaviors are released, you know, I'm not saying in 10 minutes, but in several iterations of short sessions that include a hands-on approach coupled with a dialogue that I can guide you through, actually break down that neuronal consolidation physiologically. And of course, that's the incredibly liberating experience of coming out of something that has been diagnosed and named and, you know, medicated, and that you've been labeled with, and suddenly realizing it was a physiological entrenchment that you can be freed of with the right support. So that's one of the ways that I have approached clinically traumatic brain injury, neurodiversity in people of all ages, and addictions. So that is available to you also through the TARA approach.
I want to actually, just because you mentioned there about traumatic brain injury, you know, it's like one of those things that the Western model doesn't really have many tools around. Traumatic brain injury is one of my absolute favorite things to treat. I can go, I mean, I've had it done on myself, but I can do, you know, doing it on other people too, where you can just go in and pay attention to the structures and get out of the way, and they will resolve without breaking open the head, without, without excess swelling, without, like, it's so profoundly helpful for people, you know, and it's so available to us.
And anyone can learn it. And of course, that's what really frightens medical professionals when you say that. And I am not saying that casually. I am not saying that's going to be true under all circumstances. Please understand that. I am not making a generic statement that will be true 100% of the time. Never would I make a statement like that. But under some circumstances that I have witnessed and that I have participated in, exactly what Stella presented applies and is liberating and is called a miracle, but it's actually a natural event, which is probably what a miracle is. So with that, let's bring Jim in so that we can draw this to a close, knowing that you can come into the after chat, which has been vibrant with very focused comments and additions and questions that Spring and I are delighted to respond to. So please join us in the after chat.
Thank you, Stephanie, Stella, and Spring. I love the notion that the miraculous is actually the most natural, which is both a measure of how disconnected we are and also how natural miracles also are. So I really love that point, and I think that your program and the three of you exemplify this the natural nature of the miraculous in very, very exquisite ways. You know, I also love the notion that was brought up earlier. I think you mentioned it, Stella, about spiritual bypass, and you know, the fact that we're really in the wild, wild west. You know, and that's worth just noting that in this Copernican revolution, all things are now possible, and everything is on the table. You know, from gender to sexuality to technology and artificial intelligence to better human relations and the new physics and the wonder of cosmology that is breaking forth as one scientific endeavor and discovery after another points back to the ancient origins of human intuition. It's really quite extraordinary, our time. You know, every book is laced with scientific discoveries that are always just pointing us back in an act of remembering. And that's just such a profound awareness that I think we all have. And Wade, the three of you have brought this into our attention this week, day after day, has been quite exquisite. I just want to acknowledge your mastery and the way that you've so effortlessly complemented each other and brought to our collective awareness the power of healing through the natural processes of body and mind. So I want to thank all of you very, very deeply for your presence with us, and hope and encourage all of you out there on the 30th of May to join Stephanie and Spring and Stella for a deeper dive into what this program will entail. And I would just emphasize that whatever you need, you can get from the program. If you just need to take some courses, but you're not interested in the degree, that's perfectly okay. If you're interested in a master's but not a PhD or vice versa, that's also okay. The main thing is that you avail yourself of some of the deepest and most cutting edge wisdom of our time about how each of us can not only heal, but fortify and empower ourselves just through natural practices and processes. It's an extraordinary awareness at a time of high-tech medicine and scientific reductionism. So thank you. I just want to say thank you.
And I want to say thank you, Jim, for the remarkable platforms that you have erected that make it possible for a delivery like this to happen. It is of enormous significance, and it is in its own way regenerative health. So thank you for your visionary intelligence, Jim.
With pleasure. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And so that'll bring us to a close for our program on regenerative health. You're all welcome to the after session chat if you want to explore more. Have a good weekend, and we'll see you again on Humanity Rising on Monday. But Stephanie, Spring, Stella, collective bow to you. It's been beautiful.
Thank you, Jim.
Truly beautiful. Bye-bye.